I would like to talk about knowledge today. And this comes from the idea that we acquire knowledge. When we grew up in this society, we were taught that, or we were given the notion that knowledge is acquired by receiving information, which is not too far from where I stand in terms of how we acquire knowledge. It has to do with always a teacher and a student. But I would like to reduce it more to the speaker and the listener, which in this case, I would be the speaker and you are the listener. And we have been confused with the idea that we humans have a blank slate when we are born, and that all the information that we perceive from our surroundings is what's teaching us, because it creates memories, and those memories are somehow stored in the brain. And we haven't found that place where things are stored. Sure, we have parts of the brain that are stimulated when we are thinking and so on, but that doesn't prove that there is clearly knowledge stored in the brain. In fact, there are so many anomalies of people who have had brain injury and somehow they either lose their memories and then they come back. So there is just no way of pointing out um, to that thesis. And in any case, it just doesn't make sense. It's almost like I am putting information in your brain that you've never had, and somehow it's just being stuck there. We can see this in our education systems, how it doesn't work, because we're trying to give kids, or teenagers for that matter, information so they can store it there and use it. You can see that this is a flaw because we do not give the proper information that is needed, and we're trying to create a curriculum that works for everybody. And the way that I see that knowledge is actually not acquired, but it's stimulated. You see, the speaker itself is not imparting any knowledge. Sure, the speaker has knowledge, but so does the listener. And what's happening is that the exchange of energies that is happening between the speaker and the voice or the text and the listener or the reader is that the information is already there. It's just being stimulated by, say, the speaker in this case, or the teacher. So the information needs to be there. In other words, what is happening is a rearrangement of the concepts that we have, and that the person is making sense of something that they already knew. It's almost like creating a pattern that exists already in the person's mind, and it's been stimulated by somebody. So the whole idea, or the epistemological conundrum that we have into how we acquire knowledge, it's in the Western world, of course, it has been truncated by the idea that there is nothing beyond the mind. So the mind has to somehow retain this information as it's perceived outside. Patterns, perhaps, yes, we're very good at that. And I always talk about patterns and how humans have this amazing ability of recognizing patterns. But the information is already there for it to create a pattern. So in the Western world, we have put aside everything else but the mind, and we think that way. In the Far East, we have seen that there is a nothing but the primitive mind, which And they say that there is no mind, which is true. In their own sense, of course, it is true. We don't have a true mind. And they are right in the sense that everything that we talk about, that we think we know, it's actually illusory. That is true. There is no pure knowledge here. There is no true knowledge because of the reality that we're living in this human third density consciousness. So the idea that we acquire knowledge and that we can impart knowledge, it's actually a fallacy from this point of view. What is really happening, like I said, is just that the information that is being exchanged, it's stimulating. It's just like the water beating against the rocks. You know, the water is not making the rocks and the rock is not making the splash. It's just a happening. It's just something that is working together for it to form the bashing of the waves against the rocks. So that is exactly what's happening. Even right now, all this information that I am moving around, that I'm steering in the environment of your electronic as you listen to me, and that you are perceiving in your mind is just moving the information that is already there. Socrates used to talk about this thousands of years ago, 2,600 years ago. He went on to say that we don't have knowledge that is acquired like that. And in fact, Socrates didn't like writing anything. We don't have anything from Socrates because he just liked talking to people and seeing what people would say. And he would go on to say, I mean, he inspired Plato, of course, and the rest, Aristotle and so on, to just say that people knew information already. They weren't taught anything. So the idea is not new. It's not something that, of course, I created. And you see, when you perceive it now from the field of consciousness that we are, you have spent many incarnations honing this or tuning into this information. This is why those of you who follow me in the law of one, you find this weird resonance that is just almost like impossible to describe as you read and understand the text, or even when I do my interpretations of it, it seems to resonate because that information is already there. You have been honing that for, who knows, hundreds, thousands of years. This information has been here always. It's in the field of consciousness. So you, as a tuned channel, can actually perceive this information and make sense of it, create patterns that have been already there, quicker, faster, and it almost feels like you're getting back your old memories. So in that sense, it's just a big stimulus that's happening between the speaker and the listener. And the beauty of it is that we only need to express ourselves for this information to flow. There is no need to have a truth or a final truth. There is no need to have, the final hypothesis, the string theory that would bind everything together. There would never be such thing because our reality is just to speculate about things and to have fun with it, not to get too worked up on, the idea that this must be final. This is why I say that the Far East was actually right, that information is illusory by nature because the mind cannot perceive true reality. That is just a fact. We cannot perceive true reality. This is a very dense dimension of existence where we just cannot decode everything. Think about when you try to make a decision. When you try to make a decision, you try to take every possible factor into consideration. And in that process, you would find out that the process is infinite. You cannot take every data that is available. It would be impossible. So information here is not to be grasped and understood. It's only to be tuned in and to imagine the possibilities, to create a coherent reality. And that is what I try to emphasize my speech and the things that I share with people is that everything that we get is what resonates, you get, what doesn't, you reject. And in that receiving or that resonance of information, you want to create patterns in your life that make sense, coherent patterns that can draw or illustrate a world that you can live in. So that is the best view that I have, of course, for me to create congruency, and I always love to share that. So remember, everything that I said in this video, you already knew. It's just that as I speak, you simply created a picture that made more sense because you hadn't seen that way. But all that information was there.